The relationship between the African National Congress and the South African Communist Party is currently facing its most severe crisis in the post-apartheid era. For decades, the SACP has been a silent partner in the tripartite alliance, providing ideological depth and grassroots mobilization for the ANC. However, as of early 2026, this historic bond is on the verge of a messy divorce. The primary catalyst for the current friction was the ANC's decision to form a government of national unity following the 2024 elections. Let's talk more about this with political economist Ismail Lagardien. Ismail, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for speaking to us. So let's start off on that point, which is the messy divorce, as we've tried to paint it, between the SACP and the ANC.
Hi, thank you for having me. Going on the numbers only, the SACP have very limited reach and appeal to the public. That's the one point. We can't predict exactly what's going to happen next, but I think the SACP is better off within the alliance than outside the alliance. And then there's the other thing. The point about that is, as we saw with the EFF and with Erwin Jim's Revolutionary Party, the public and the electorate does not seem to have an appetite for, the communism and Marxist-Leninism. So the ANC, the SACP is probably better off within the ANC. Having said that, the ANC is becoming quite useful, and I use that word quite intentionally, to the DA. Because we may be heading to an era where the SACP is less influential on the ANC than the DA. The simple fact of that is big money, big business, public intellectuals, journalists, professors, institutions, think tanks up and down the country are all rallying behind the DA policies. So the DA will effectively become the major decision makers in the country, with the ANC being used only as window dressing. And that is the danger that the ANC has to address. As for the SACP, I can't see the SACP changing that.
All right, you raise an interesting issue, which obviously adds more to the election dynamics that we're facing. So as the ANC faces this January 8 message, what is it trying to achieve, right? Is it mobilization, reassurance to markets, reassurance to workers, or internal discipline? I mean, what's the primary audience? Who are they speaking to, right? And when we speak of primary audience, right, based on the numbers that are in the stadium at the moment, it would appear that the ANC does not have the audience that it is looking for.
Well, you raise an interesting point. We must remember Julius Malema filled stadiums. He had massive following, but it didn't come out. They didn't get to the election. So the ANC's January 8th statement is part tradition, part sort of nostalgia, and a part of what I think is a very weak attempt to reset itself. Because the ANC has big problems internally as it has externally. Internally, there's a dearth of good quality leadership. There's a dearth of leaders with vision that has, nothing to do with the romance of the liberation era and all that. Now, that's all fine, but we're entering a very dangerous world, and I in that respect, this might not be, it doesn't really matter what people think, but it's difficult to see beyond Cyril Ramaphosa and Lamola. And Ronald Lamona as leaders with great, credibility and vision and an understanding of global affairs. And this is the point. Of course, Godongwana is also quite plugged in. But the problem for the ANC is that it is externally. Externally, it's coming under enormous pressure. And I don't think filling stadiums is going to change that, because there are two things. In principle, opposition parties want to defeat incumbents. So the DA wants to defeat the ANC. But the DA also weaponizes everything that's gone wrong in the country because they want to take responsibility for things going right. In other words, here's a very simple example. If the ANC in government today says, let's build a bridge, the DA will try and stop that bridge from being built, not physically. They'll say, the ANC is corrupt, the ANC can't do this, because the DA wants to build that bridge. So that is the difficulty that the ANC faces. And I don't think there's a crop of leaders who can actually fight that battle, those battles in language and what we call discourse, all that discourse and big money and the dominant people who dominated the political economy before 1994 are making a huge comeback. Big money is shifting towards that class of people and away from the ANC, and the ANC only has itself to blame for that.
You raise an interesting point. And that's around the caliber of individuals in the ANC or those that might have capacity to take, if you will, the country to the promised land. Now, earlier, Iman Rapeti was speaking to Sandile Swane, and he's spoken about how many documents from the ANC and other political parties that he's gone through. And every single one of these documents, he argues, is a blueprint of the highest order that should take South Africa through all of its problems and beyond. But the issue is those individuals that have or lack capacity to see these documents and strategies through. So how does the ANC address that issue? Because 2026 is a watershed moment for the party, you'll agree, based on the upcoming local government elections.
Right. Yeah. The worst thing I will say about the ANC in government is, they've created this monster of a public service. Let's just draw a distinction between government and the state. The government might come up with these, and its intellectuals might come up with these wonderful documents and great blueprints, and we saw the National Development Plan. But once that document and that set of policies goes into the state system, that implementation becomes a problem. Not because, if you to understand how implementation works, just imagine setting priorities and setting sequences. So to build, let's use the bridge again, to build a bridge, first you have to understand why a bridge is needed, where it's needed, and who's going to build it and who's going to benefit from it. But each step of the way in that prioritization and sequencing, there's rent seeking, there's incompetence. You have people making decisions about a bridge being built who are not engineers, who are not community, who don't understand the economics of transportation, why bridges are built. So it becomes a messy affair. So there's still an enormous gap between policy making and implementation, and that is completely the ANC's fault. And that is why I say that the DA and what I call the old Volksraad people, the DA, which is made up of all National Party people, they are tapping into that and they're using that as a weapon to defeat the ANC, which is what political parties do, and they want to build that bridge because they want to take responsibility for all the good things and deflect all the bad things on black governance or African governments or the African National Party, African National Congress.
Ismail, as we wrap up the conversation, how does Cyril Ramaphosa today, at this January 8 celebration, wrestle the initiative from the DA and other political parties that are trying to take away that initiative and reassure not just the Northwest as a constituent, but the entire country that the ANC is indeed the party to vote for?
Well, on the one, I must say I do think that whatever the president says or the leader of the ANC says today is actually an exercise in futility, because the weight of what he says has to be weighed up between. We have to look at rhetoric, we have to look at policy, we have to look at the reality on the ground. Of course they're going to romanticize the ANC. Of course they're going to say good things. People only say good things about themselves and reflect on the bad things, but try to get the people along with them. But when he leaves that stadium today, when he goes back, he has to deal with the power, like big money, big politics, and the infrastructure that is so rightfully or wrongfully, that is so opposed to anything that the ANC does. And the ANC only has itself to blame for that. So I think there's a big gap between what he'll say on the public stage, to the audience, and what he can actually do, what he can actually achieve. And that is the gap that the ANC needs to bridge.
The ANC certainly, according to political economist Ismail Lagardien, have their work cut out for them, and we look forward to what the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa will say in that January 8th statement.